everyone. I'm John Evans. Welcome to another episode of One-on-One. This is the second part of our look into the award-winning independent film called Drought. If you haven't seen it, you need to. It's streaming right now on Amazon Prime Video. Shot here in southeastern North Carolina, Drought centers around the story of Carl. He's a young man on the autism spectrum who is fascinated with weather. He predicts that a storm is going to hit in his rural North Carolina town and relieve the excessive drought conditions. Today, we have the two co-creators and co-directors of the film, Hannah Black and Megan Petersen, in to talk about it. And by the way, they also starred in the movie as well. You're going to hear their inspiring story. It's one of perseverance, commitment, and undying support for each other. Megan Petersen and Hannah Black, filmmakers, actors, directors, best friends, welcome to the One-on-One with John Evans podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
You guys are just so special in what you have put together with Drought, an independent film now available on Amazon Prime. I watched it and I immediately messaged both of you after I did because I wanted to talk about all the messages that I got away from it, but also the more I looked into it, everything that has gone on through that whole process. And I was talking to Megan before you got on today, Hannah. You guys are everywhere. You're doing Q&A with film festivals. You're doing podcasts about movie making. You're doing stuff on autism awareness. You're doing stuff on women in film. Hannah, what does it feel like to be on the other side of people wanting to talk to you when for so long you may have been the one wanting to talk to other people?
Oh gosh. I think Megan and I are both kind of in that transition right now. Like when you contacted us, we're like, wait, he wants to talk to us? Really? It's such an honor that people are resonating with the film, that people are interested in chatting with us about how it was made or the message behind it. And I don't know. I think I don't even know how to answer that question because I think we're in this weird, hopefully it'll continue this cool transition of people reaching out because we want to share or spread the word about the film. So, yeah.
Megan, what about you?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, going back to one of the first kind of podcasts or things we listened to was a talk from Mark Duplass from South by Southwest about how you can make movies with your friends. And we listened to that talk and it inspired us, and just how kind of cool and also bizarre and humbling it is to now maybe someone will listen to our story and feel inspired to go make their film. And it's really neat to just continue that message.
It is really a great achievement, and there's so much I want to talk to you about the movie, but I want to get to know you a little bit first. Hannah, you grew up here in Wilmington, right? What were your childhood aspirations? What did you want to do?
I did grow up here in Wilmington, and I did not know that you could be an actor in a movie. I mean, obviously there's people that do that, but I thought that was for special people that maybe came from Hollywood or just were very gifted or whatever. And so growing up, I was just a competitive surfer, went to Hoggard High School, had my friends. I think I was in homeroom.
Hoggard is where all three of the Evans kids went, so I got to give a thumbs up to Hoggard.
I went with your son, yes. So great guy. And it's true. And yeah, I was just and still am, obviously, a very normal person. But again, movie making and acting didn't come until after I graduated high school and had another career.
Yeah, you were involved in teaching for a while. And when did the acting bug kind of come into your life?
Yeah, I was wrapping up my first full year of teaching. I'd been working at this school for 2 years. And I knew that although I really did love my students, and gosh, the school that I worked for was incredible, it just wasn't right for me. And so around the end of the year, I kind of knew I was possibly going to transition out, but I didn't know when. And then I saw a wonderful little indie film and was like, I think I want to do that. It came out of nowhere, truly just out of nowhere. And I think people thought it was a phase. I even thought maybe it was a phase, but I decided to leave teaching after the school year and pursue acting. And that's where I met Megan.
I was going to say, Megan, you grew up in the Lincolnton area, correct?
That's right, near like Gastonia, Hickory, in a small town in western North Carolina.
And
Yeah.
what did you have on your radar growing up? What were your aspirations? Was acting and performing part of your childhood?
It was in the community theater level. My dad loved community theater, so I'd tag along with him and thought, this is so cool to be a part of those performances. And I even looked into going into college for acting, but same as Hannah, I thought, there's no way. People don't do this as a career, and kind of got nervous and backed out. And I love science. So I went to school for forensic science, which is very different from film. I think the connection was I love to figure things out and to solve problems and to put things together, which ultimately is filmmaking. And I moved to Wilmington, and we had One Tree Hill was here at the time, and I got on set and thought, I love this. I was an extra on the show, and right after that, I tried to figure out what are your next steps if you want to have a speaking role on TV. And that's when I also enrolled in acting class at Actors Arsenal here in town and met Hannah.
I was going to say, you moved to Wilmington about 2008, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Right. And
yeah.
Actors Arsenal, you guys took classes. There was an automatic chemistry there? Did you look across the room? Did she say something that she liked? Did one raise their hand? And tell us about the chemistry, because it takes more than one chemical to make a mixture and to make something, take off.
Yes, we both had enrolled in a class called Meisner Technique, which is a 2-year program. And in Meisner, you learn a lot about all of your fellow actors. And we really connected there because you learn how each other ticks, like what makes each other emotional, what is each other's strengths. And at the end of each year, it's a 2-year program. At the end of each year, we made a short film with our class. And I think that that's where we really saw that we loved acting together in film. So we took it one step further, and we made our first short film outside of class together, where Hannah directed it and I was in it and she was also in it. And that's when we realized we really liked also creating our own content together. And that film got into some festivals and showed us that what we had to say resonates with people.
What was the name of that film, Hannah?
It's called If.
Okay.
IF.
Right. I've read something about in some of the material that I read about you guys. What was it about?
Yeah, so Megan wrote it, but essentially it's kind of what would it look like if a couple who was having a very difficult time in their relationship just had a conversation one evening, or also what if they didn't? So it's 2 alternate kind of realities, and really just kind of the message is sitting down and having a conversation with someone, even if it's difficult, might be really helpful, But yeah, it's a little 5-minute short. There's not a lot of dialogue. Megan did awesome in it. And yeah, we had no clue what we were doing. No idea.
You made 6 films. When did Drought come into the thought process?
Really? So the 6 films, it was like our Meisner shorts, and then we did this film If, and then we had our hands in like a couple of others. But Drought came into the picture pretty much after we finished If and had submitted it to festivals. We kind of had that bug, and we realized how much we love working together, collaborating. And so If was wrapped in July and was out in the festival or submitted to festivals. And then in August, that's when I came to Megan with the concept of Drought. And then we went on to create the first draft within a month. And then for about 2.5 years, worked on rewriting the script about 7 times.
Wow.
Yeah. But it was needed. It was, we had no clue what we were doing. We never written a feature film before. So.
And what were you doing, I guess, to pay the bills? I mean, at this point in time, I imagine, although you're pursuing it, it still wasn't something that could probably pay the bills, or am I wrong?
You're 100% right. What was I doing at that time? Because being an artist, you change your career, your money-making career a lot.
Right.
I was working at my husband's company in sales called Half United.
Oh. Yep.
Yeah, so I was doing that, which was great, very flexible hours. Megan, what were you doing?
At that point, I worked as a volunteer coordinator at Port City Community Church here in town.
Mike Ashcraft's a great guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Love Mike. And of course, Carmen and Christian are great people too. And I'm going to bring Christian into the conversation a little bit later, Hannah, because I think I actually met you at an event when Carmen and Christian were ladies and gentlemen of the Cape Fear in 2018, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh, good memory. Yes.
Yeah, because my wife was 2016. Mm-hmm. She was in it, and she was for Volunteer of the Year at Hoggard and everything else that she did. And then we, when they asked us who we thought would be good, I said, Carmen with Half United I thought would be great, because I really think that the efforts that they've done are tremendous, beyond anything I've ever done as far as helping this world is concerned. But anyway, I'm already diverging onto a path I wanted to get to later. And again, I told you that I hold you to in such high regard is that because you guys didn't let the word can't come into your conversation. When you started all this, so many people, me included, have those things we would like to do, those dreams we want to chase, but we say, we can't right now. I can't get this done. I've got another job. I don't have enough time. Where did the drive in you come from, Megan, that when Drought was finally something that you wanted to move forward with, when did you get that attitude that can't wasn't going to be a part of the conversation?
Oh, wow. That's a great question, because sometimes it felt really intimidating. I would be lying if I didn't say sometimes it was a topic of conversation of how. The how is really a scary question sometimes. How are we going to do this with limited resources and limited knowledge? But you're right, can't just never happened. I don't think. I'm trying to think back. I don't know if it's because of our partnership, of the accountability with each other. If I said, I don't think we can do this, then I'm not just letting myself down, I'm letting Hannah down and the things she's created. So I think there was this mutual respect and belief in each other that kept us going.
Hannah, were there times when you had to pick one another up, when it got to the point where it was like, maybe it's not meant to be?
Totally. I think that's, again, the beautiful thing about a partnership is when one person is feeling really burnt out or just really feeling like this, again, not can't, but again, how. The other person goes and picks them up. And we've always been able to do that. And I think it's also because of Meisner and because we know each other so well, we understand the reasons why the other person might feel defeated at the moment and how we can bring life back into them so that we can join back together and do the thing. Partnerships are a blessing for sure.
You both talked about how important it was to make sure that you found local crew here in Wilmington. As I watched the movie, I could see Paul's Place, which was so cool. I saw Jerry Winsett, who I've known for decades. Fran Tabor, who I've gone to church with at St. Mark's and my kids have known growing up. It's so neat to see that beyond, in a feature film, you may see Williston or you may see Southport. but this is really part of your movie in every way, shape, and form. Was it that important for this to be a Southeastern North Carolina-based crew, actors, everything for you, Hannah?
It was. That was the heart behind the project, even from the very beginning. It started off with, because Megan and I are actors first, wanting to create roles for ourselves and all of our amazing friends who are here in the Southeast. More than just, which we're grateful for, but the little bit roles where you're saying, more bacon, sir, or, whatever. It's like an actual character. But then we actually, in order to raise funds, we did this thing called the Hometown Heroes Rally for
Right.
hosted by Seed and Spark. And in that, they really encouraged you to create the film where you are with a local cast and crew, which was our heart totally from the beginning. And I think when we did that crowdfunding campaign, really seeing how much our community rallied behind us was so beautiful and inspiring. It was it was already a no-brainer, but then it was a double no-brainer to hire such talented crew here in Wilmington. And of course, our city's awesome, so why wouldn't we film here too?
Right. I agree with you. One of the neat things I saw, and I'm one of those who likes to stick around to the end of the credits to see things like that, not just because of Marvel. I'm just like that if I see anybody I know, especially in Wilmington-based products, or productions rather. But you had all the donors at the end as part of the credit. And I just, again, that's one of those things that it was just a tip of the hat to everybody who helped make it happen. Megan, do you think had you guys not won that $25,000 from Jay and Mark, would the production have gotten finished?
I think it would have, because of those over 400 people that contributed. I do. I think our hearts were like, we're going to make this movie no matter what. It's what we had said in our pitch to them. And I really believe we would have. I do believe it would have been a challenge because they brought some the funds they gave us helped tremendously, but also their knowledge behind micro budget filmmaking helped us really be able to make the film for the budget we had. It would have been crazy to try to do it for the budget we had with what we had originally written.
Give me one piece of that advice, something that obviously watching the movie you might not know, but what's one piece of advice that they gave you that helped with that whole process?
Sure. I think the greatest piece of advice was Mark just said, what's the heart of the story? What is the core of this story, and funnel everything through that lens. And if a scene or a location doesn't really help with what the core of your story is, then just see if you can get rid of it or pare it down. And that really helped us to scale the film down. If you would have read the draft that we originally sent him, it had like an auditorium scene in it and things that were cool, but they weren't necessary. You could tell that same message in a smaller, more affordable way.
Another one of the things that I love about this is that you cast an actor who has autism to play a role of a character who has autism, Owen Shide, his very first production. Having a nephew who is autistic and nonverbal autistic, that means so much to those of us who know what families go through, the search for independence in those families and in those individuals. How important was it, Hannah, for you to have an actor with autism to play that role?
Thank you for sharing that. It was the most important thing for us in making Drought, because that's the heart of a big part of the story. It's part of the heart of the story. And so we knew that it was critical to find an actor who was autistic to play Carl. And so the really wonderful thing that we found, we did all the casting ourselves, which, we're not casting directors, but we contacted agents that represent folks or actors with disabilities. And we did a nationwide search, and it was very specific. It was an actor who had to be 18 to play younger. He had to be Caucasian because he had to play our brother, and look like us, you know, and he had to be autistic because that was so important to us, authentic representation in the casting process. And we were overwhelmed with the amount of talent that came in. It was hard to choose that, and we want to spread that message. If people are nervous for some reason or feel like it'll be difficult, it is not. It was so wonderful to see all this talent across the US that could play the role of Carl. But we were lucky enough that the right person, which it felt too good to be true, was here in Wilmington. Owen is so talented and so wise beyond his years. And we had him, we put him through the ringer. We had him come in for like 3 callbacks and do multiple auditions, and he was just right for the role. And so, yeah, it was very, very important. And we would really encourage people to cast authentically.
One of the scenes that I think is so important is when he's been fired, but he doesn't know it. And you and him, it was shot down the aisle of the grocery store, which was a great piece of filmmaking. And it shows you talking to him. And I've seen my sister talk to her son in that way of, okay, I'm having a conversation with you. And that immediately brought me back to see Kathy and Anthony in you and Owen. And the independence and the sibling support, just those messages to get out to the rest of the world from those who know autism, I thought was so important. Megan, that's one takeaway I wanted to share with you about everything in the way it was put together.
Yeah, that was really important to us we know with this movie, we're just telling the story of Carl, and when you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism. So this is one story, but our hope is that families and siblings will see this and just have, you know, that greater appreciation for each other, and to be able to see and celebrate the differences that we all have in our families when we love each other so much, but it's hard to understand each other.
Yeah, that's one of the messages I took away. I thought it was really cool. Okay, ice cream truck, 105 degrees in the summer. Yeah, you guys could do that. Out in the middle of nowhere, bugs in the middle of the summer. Yeah, you could do that. A hurricane, it stopped you for a little while. You could do that. What was the toughest day of all of it?
Oh yes, that was day 6, right?
Yeah.
That was
when you got the personal phone call.
Got a phone call that no one wants to get. But the thing is, no matter what you're doing, when you're chasing your dreams, the world still spins, right? Things still happen. And so I got a phone call on day 6 of our 18-day shoot that my mother had unexpectedly passed away. And not the thing that you want to get a phone call about, especially when you're surrounded by these people trying to make this project and all of that. But Hannah was amazing, and our team was so amazing to really surround me and come together. That's when we became not just a crew and people making a movie, but we really gelled as a family to support each other. That was hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then 6 days later, that Hurricane Florence came. That shot, John, that you were just talking about, where Hannah and Owen are having that moment in the grocery store, it was starting to sprinkle the first drops of rain from Hurricane Florence.
Wow.
And that's why it's angled back towards the store. And we were in our minds thinking about how we'd have to pause for production to evacuate during that moment.
And the ice cream truck had broken down. Legitimately.
Really?
Yes.
Yes, that evening.
Megan, what was it like then coming back after that break of having to see your family and having just that personal tragedy and sorrow? You said Hannah and everybody were great, but it still has got to be, you've got to take that step to get back into the real world again.
You do, and so quickly. And I think that's what was the most challenging part, is to deal with stuff that, like, in my 30s, I never thought I would have to deal with. And then jump back into trying to lead a team, and then just thank goodness for a partnership. So personally challenging, and interesting that the hurricane happened, because that time that we took between shooting that first block and the second block gave me a moment to, like, breathe and really have some time to grieve and process what had just happened. Because coming right back, there wasn't a lot of time to process what had just occurred. And so just 1 week later, I was able to take that time personally to process that.
You know, I could spend a couple of hours with you, actually longer than the movie itself, talking about the story and everything else like that. But you have all done so many different kind of podcasts and discussions that people can find that anywhere. What I want to know is, what's the thing about the Wizard of Oz Easter eggs?
What's the thing?
What's the secret about all that?
Well, it was probably our last draft of Drought, right before we were, getting ready to head into pre-production. And we realized there were so many parallels to the Wizard of Oz, which, of course, who doesn't love the Wizard of Oz? But we were really excited about it. And so we decided to be really intentional with that while filming. So there's all these little odes to the Wizard of Oz throughout Drought. The 4 characters represent 4 of the main characters of the Wizard of Oz: Dorothy, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion. And so, yeah, if you look, like, I'll give one example that's pretty obvious, is Sam is wearing red shoes, like Dorothy. So
I'm going to have to watch it again and look for all those little nuances. They passed right by me. I was just looking for areas that I recognized.
Yes.
Like highways in Sampson County and Paul's Place and all those other different places.
Yes.
The other thing, when I talked to Drew Scheid and Owen a while back for another podcast interview, Drew said one of the things that he loved that is part of the final draft, and I imagine as I was watching it, it was a real touching moment when you, Hannah, and Drew were kind of sharing each other's feelings, and then all of a sudden, he farts.
Yeah.
Now, what was that? Was that written in? Was that ad lib? He told me it was actually written in, but yeah. I got to know if it actually was written into the script.
It was written in. I have the humor of a second grade boy, so there's that, and Megan does as well. So, but yeah, it was written in really because we wanted the audience to understand how close of a relationship Sam and Lewis have. They are like siblings as well. So like him farting while also having this very like kind of semi-serious conversation beating around the bush. Everybody has those friends like that. And yeah. So the fart was totally needed. It was very fun to.
Oh, I mean, it came out of nowhere. I was right. sitting on the couch and I was like, did Drew's character just fart? That really broke up that really touching scene. And all of a sudden, I said, okay, all right, you got to give him a prop for comedy.
Yes.
For years, I hosted Best Foot Forward in New Hanover County. One of the things as I'm standing off stage and watching the performers, especially the elementary school kids, is that they may be up on the stage and they may be they're 1, 2, and they're memorizing what they're doing and they're counting off and they're on stage maybe for the first time. And then they get to the end of their performance and they stop and they're done and they put their hands up and there's a millisecond where there's indecision as to whether the audience is going to like what they did. And I can't find the word for that yet, but between when they stop, that indecision, and then the smile when the audience gives feedback is probably the best part of the entire night for me. The reason I'm asking or telling you that, when you had the finished product and you showed it for the first time to somebody outside your circle, take me to that moment and the anticipation for the response.
That's great. Well, it's interesting. When we finished the movie, the pandemic had happened. So we had to wait a really, really long time to even have kind of an audience, to see how people react. Luckily, we've sat, with family and just like a couple of friends who got to see it. My favorite thing ever is when Megan's sister saw it and she said, I thought I was, what did she say, Megan?
My sister watched it, and my 7-year-old niece loves the fart, by the way. My sister saw it and she was like, oh, I'm not going to be embarrassed for you. Thank you. We're going to put that on the poster. My sister is not embarrassed for me. The family that's so nervous. I go back to, besides doing some test screenings, we really have never seen it with a live audience. But I remember when we made the decision to do our virtual world premiere with the Vail Film Festival. And we said, okay, here we go. And when we knew it was about to go live, I think I was just pacing around my house. I wore a dress like it was a world premiere, and I had my champagne, and I was just pacing around the house thinking, I was probably in that moment that you're talking about for an hour and a half until the credits rolled and we started to get text and messages that people resonated with the film.
It's got to be, I like I said, I love seeing the children's face when that happens, but I can only imagine that you had a little bit of that yourself.
Oh yes, during the whole time it was playing, that probably was the look on my face, at least.
Yeah. So, Hannah, you're expecting, are you not?
I am. I'm about to have a baby in 5 weeks.
How has that, compare pregnancy to birthing a movie, right, as it were?
I haven't birthed yet. This is my first child, so I can't say which one is harder. But I will be honest, making a movie has a much longer gestational period than 9 months. And that is hard. So, I think, making a movie might be harder. I haven't had the birthing process yet. So we'll get back to the answer to that in 5 weeks, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'll put it on the poster of the podcast at the end.
Perfect.
I have shared with people that I would not be nearly as in this business as long as I have been if I had not married a saint. And I tell people my wife Sheila is a saint. While I was busy crafting a career and working long hours because I've always felt I had to work harder than everybody else, she was busy raising our kids and doing a lot of that stuff. And I regret that now. I wasn't as involved as I should have been. Megan, tell me about your husband, Lucas. How much does he mean to your success? And as you were going through this process, how supportive was he?
Whoa, I'll cry. I'll tear up. That's my answer. No.
Good, because I like when my guests cry. No, just kidding.
You do the same. He means everything. He's listed in the credits as our strong man, and not just because of his strength physically for moving, concession machines and Coke machines out of the shot, but also
an ice cream truck
and pushing an ice cream truck solely when it was broke down. He's strong physically, but also an emotional strength, an emotional rock. He works at the hospital here in town in the ICU. And I think that just being a nurse that's his character, that emotional and physical strength to be there for people. So he's totally been so supportive of my dream. And I think he's probably part of the reason too I'm not allowed to say can't. He's like, this is what you want to do, just do it.
What about you, Hannah? Christian is a very talented young man. He launched the business of Half United with his sister. And tell me about what he means to your career and his support beyond just doing all the music for the movie as well.
Right. And I'll cry. Yeah, he has been such an encourager, even before Drought. When I was teaching and I said, hey, I'm really unhappy, I want to pursue acting. I know this is out of the blue. I never taken acting classes or anything. And I think a normal response would have been like, hey, I think you're having like a quarter life crisis. Let's talk about it.
Quarter life, that's funny.
Yeah, right. He was like, man, then quit your job and let's get you enrolled in classes and you can do it. And I think, again, just like Megan said, can't is not allowed in the vocabulary because it just isn't. When I express my feelings of defeat with him, he's like, okay, well, that's fine to feel that way, but you have to keep going. He believed in me and Megan and this project so much. And then again, just like Lucas, provided his talents, making the score in a month in this room, which is not the best, audio and stuff, but he did such an amazing job. And so yeah, the support from him is everything.
And did I see one of your social media posts that people can now get the score, right?
Yeah, starting tomorrow, anywhere that you stream music. So Spotify, iTunes, anything. Yeah.
Endlessly heartfelt and bursting with charm, Drought is a delightful and reflective comedic drama, unafraid to examine how we shield ourselves by protecting the ones we love and embracing what it means to have a family, normal or not. That's one review. This one is my favorite. I'm pretty sure if you don't like Hannah Black and Megan Petersen's Drought, you suck as a human being.
We love that one too.
Yeah, I saw you highlighted that one on social media.
Yeah.
Drought is ultimately about the sacrifices we make for family and the significant ways they reward us in return. It suggests little acts of love are all we have, but that they're enough. It's always good to get feedback from the public, but when you read different people's takes on your production, what goes through your mind? Do you then see something that maybe you didn't see beforehand, Megan?
Yes, I think sometimes we read it and are reminded of how intentional we were in creating it. Because we created it in 2015 and the production was in 2018. And it's so neat now in 2021 to read these comments and think, oh my goodness, they get it. Like they understood these, maybe even at times nuanced and subtle themes that we had intentionally put throughout the story. And I cannot express to you what those words mean to us, how much it warms our heart to hear that people got it.
Now, Hannah, when you deal with the public, sometimes they're not so good.
True.
Social media now, I think, and this is again just me, has created a kind of keyboard muscles in people that they can type what they want and hit send, and it's more enter buttons wear out because people hit them angry when they send emails and stuff of that nature. So how difficult is it when you do put your life out there and your soul and your heart and everything for 6 or 7 years when you get some reviews that maybe aren't so great?
Yeah, we've definitely gotten our share of reviews that are not so nice. For us though, I thought that we were ready for some cruel reviews, and we were, nervous about them. And I thought that I would take them more to heart than I have. But it's been interesting, these reviews that come in that aren't so nice. Sometimes you're like, okay, well, that's fine. It just wasn't their movie. Sometimes they're like, wow, they really did not like my character, The only time that it hurts is when it feels like there is, questioning behind why we created this story, or the authenticity of it. That's the only time that I think we're like, oh no, you don't get to say that. Like, our hearts are so in this story for, spreading autism acceptance and people just learning to love everyone for who they are, which is very ironic whenever they say that they hate this film or the people or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, I think Megan and I are just like, okay, people are allowed to not like it. But I think the main thing, as long as especially the disability community is really jiving with this movie, then we feel so happy, so happy.
What have the streaming services meant to the availability of people seeing Drought? I talked to Chris Everett, who's director of Wilmington on Fire, and I told him, if it wasn't for the Amazons and some of the Netflix and some of the others, people might have to get a DVD of your documentary in the library in order to see it. What does it mean, does it mean really the world at this point in time for Drought and for you as independent filmmakers? Hannah?
Yeah, it's critical, especially for independent filmmakers. Making, Blu-rays or DVDs and sending those out costs a lot of money. And so the idea that we can put Drought on a platform like Amazon that tons of people know about is so exciting, especially because our hope more than anything for this film is for people to watch it and learn that there's no such thing as normal and spread autism acceptance. That's so, so important. So a platform like Amazon can make that one step closer to making that happen.
All right, Megan, what's next? After Hannah's family grows and you have another cast member to write into the next story,
Indeed.
What's next for the production team of Hannah and Megan?
Sure. We are continuing to market Drought and get it out. Right now it's out in the US, and so we're working on getting it out internationally. And then, of course, we're going to create more stories together. And our heart behind our stories is going to continue to be to tell Southern stories in an authentic way, because we really feel that having geographically diverse stories is important in the storytelling world. So we might take a little more like Southern Gothic route next time, a little bit more gritty. We'll see.
Well, if you need something about a news anchor who grew up in the Pocono Mountains and moved to North Carolina and is trying to maintain his importance in a world of social media, I'm your guy.
I think we might need a character like that in our next film. We'll write you in. That sounds great.
Oh,
I think you need your own movie. That's interesting.
Again, you guys are such a success story. And I'm a sucker for success stories. I'm a sucker for hard work and people who reach out to get their dreams. And you guys check off all of those boxes. I appreciate you taking the time today. And I know we didn't talk about story and storyboarding and character development, but you've done that before. I wanted to get to know a different side of Hannah and Megan. And I think people will really enjoy the conversation.
Thank you so much. It's been so fun.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
A big thank you to both Hannah and Megan for taking time out of their busy schedules and joining me for the podcast interview. Don't forget, if you want to see their movie Drought, it's streaming right now on Amazon Prime Video. Now, you can reach out to both of the ladies on social media. They're very active, especially on Instagram. And if you want to know the latest information on their movie, there are Drought the Movie accounts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. Now, before we go, I'd like to ask you a favor. Please download and subscribe to the One-on-One with John Evans podcast on whatever app you use to listen to your favorite shows. And if you would be so kind, please leave us a rating or a review. It's really important that we get feedback from people like you. The more we get, the higher we'll be listed on the apps, and the better chance we'll have of bringing in even more new listeners. I'm John Evans. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of One-on-One.